confusing, embarrassingly true story of the name of God. So that's what we're going to do right now, really quickly. So this word Eloheinu comes from the Hebrew word Elohim. And there are many Elohim in the Old Testament. Elohim is just a generic name that means God or gods. There are many Elohims. Eloheinu is just the possessive form of Elohim. So it means our God, or is our God, depending on where you put the is, which is a problem. Adonai means Lord. But Adonai is not actually the word that they used to have in that spot, in that passage. Originally, the word in the text at that point was Yahweh, which is a name that comes from Exodus. Remember Moses, the burning bush, says, "Who do I tell him you are?" God says, "I am." And then a little later, "I am" is very confusing. It sounds like who's on first. "I am sent me." It's like, what are you talking about? But a little later, he says, "Tell them it is Yahweh," which Yahweh was a phrase that means "I will be," essentially, similar thing. So this is considered, Yahweh was considered to be the personal name of the God of Israel. It's the ancient form of the verb "he will be." It appears, like 6,500 times in the Old Testament. But over the years, the people of God came to believe that keeping the commandment not to take the Lord's name in vain meant you weren't supposed to say this name when you came to it in the text, Yahweh. So when Yahweh appeared in the text, they would say, instead of Yahweh, they would just say the Lord as a sign of reverence. Or they would insert a workaround, which was the word the Lord in Hebrew, Adonai. And so when they came to Yahweh, they wouldn't say Yahweh, they would say Adonai instead, the Lord, and so avoid breaking the command. Which, by the way, in your English Bibles, when you read the Lord, and Lord is in all caps, that tells you this was originally Yahweh. In Hebrew, they insert Adonai. We put Lord in all caps. If it's not in all caps, it wasn't Yahweh originally. Just a little trick when you're reading your Bible. You read your Bible, right? Your Old Testament? I'm just kidding. So now, at some point, the scribes, the copiers of the scriptures, they became worried that people who are reading the text aloud might accidentally say the name that they weren't supposed to say. So they came up with this interesting solution. They took the 4 consonants from Yahweh, in English they're YHWH, and the 3 vowels from Adonai, A, O, and AI, or just A, and they zippered them together to make up a Franken word. It's not a real word. It's like a hybrid word, Yahuwah, which isn't a word at all, really. It's just a made-up word. And the idea was if you got to reading too fast and came upon that word, you wouldn't just accidentally say the name of God without thinking. You would remember, oh, that's not a word, and substitute Adonai. Or if you did read it, you were just reading a fake word, not the real name of God. So Yahuwah was a made-up word that told them Yahweh used to go here. At some point, we got afraid that you might say it, so we inserted this made-up word. What you're supposed to do is say Adonai, the Lord. But if you forget and read the word, you'll just read this fake substitute word and won't break the command. But nobody ever said Yahuwah on purpose. It wasn't a word. Now, here's the funny part, or sad part, if you're a Christian. Later Christian scribes didn't know the history. And they thought Yahuwah was actually God's name. And so they began to say it and write it and treat it as one of God's names. And it eventually entered the English lexicon as Jehovah. So, if you ever hear a fundamentalist preacher talking about the wrath of Jehovah God, you can just laugh at them because they don't know what they're talking about. You can do the Ron Swanson. I know more than you at this point, right?